So I want to start off by saying that this coming Saturday, which would be June 22nd, going to have a special podcast up, which I'll be recording over the course of the week. And I want to take questions from you guys. So make sure you hit us up on Facebook or shoot us an email, sorroweternalblog@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us at sorroweternal. Any questions you have about the site, reviews, bands, whatever you want to know. I'm looking to get a couple questions in. I've already got a couple stored up here from the last week or so I've got via email. So if you have anything you want to throw at us, please do. Now that said, it's another interesting week. I think I say that every week because it always is. We started the week off with an album that's definitely going to be one that I talk about, I think, for quite a while. The name of the band is Aetherfallen, and they are from Colorado. It's actually a one-man band. And I was really torn by this album, and I by no means am I saying I didn't like it. I actually really enjoyed it. I've listened to it quite a few times since. But the name of the album is Revelations Eternal, and really it is I'm not going to call it a concept album because it's not. It's a story album. It's kind of the end of the world, this couple going through, trying to survive what's going on, and I'm not going to obviously ruin the entire story arc for you, but I think it's worth hearing because there's a lot going on, and the story alone is incredible. I think the writing was very well done, and it tells a really emotional story, which often gets left out in metal music and metal lyrics. But my question had been whether or not the music on the album lived up to the story, or if the story was just too much of a central focus. That is the question that I haven't answered, and the lone member of the band actually answered my query on his Facebook page and said he thinks that the album does stand up to the story. And I will admit that come the end of the album, I need to know what happens. This obviously is not a one-off. This isn't here's a story, accept it, fuck you. There's got to be more to it. So I suggest that when you do listen to this, which it's on Bandcamp site, it's aetherfallen.bandcamp.com, that you read along with the story in the lyric sheet, which I've attached in the review. It's fallenmessenger.blogspot.com, so you can really get a sense for everything that's going on, because it is so much deeper than the surface would allow you to believe. So definitely give that a listen. I don't know if you'll like it. I mean, I'm still torn on whether whether I'm sold on it, but definitely worth hearing and definitely worth forming an opinion on, because as I've noted numerous times, we all have opinions and you should voice them all the time, because if you're passionate about music in any way, someone should hear what you have to say. Now that said, the band that occupied our Tuesday slot was the band Deuil. This is an album that I didn't think I was going to like it. I really didn't think I was. I kind of read the description, kind of listened to a couple seconds of it, wasn't really sure if I wanted to invest the time, because it's a very long EP. It's called Acceptance Rebuild, and if those sound familiar, it is taken from the Steps of Grief. But what I liked most about it, the music ends up being pretty fantastic, really, really rich, really, really deep. I mean, the sound they have going here is pretty fantastic. But I think that more than that, I enjoyed the emotional investment that they made. They're really showing you, like, hey, these are our view of these two stages of grief, and that's tremendous. I mean, it's honest. It's just handed to you on a silver platter, and I love that. I really do. It's hard to fault a band for going that route. Now, obviously, if the album was poorly executed or poorly conceived, well, that's different. But in this case, it wasn't. It was really well done. 2 songs, 1 acceptance, 1 rebuild. Very, very broad, sweeping aesthetics here, and some really, really raw pieces too. And they did a great job pulling it off. Definitely check that one out. Also available on their Bandcamp, deuil.bandcamp.com, which is actually the French word for morning. So I probably pronounced it wrong, and I do apologize. Brian's review this week, which he's really getting into the swing of this writing thing, He actually reviewed the new album from Kalmah, their album Seventh Symphony. Great play on words there. This band has been around, I mean, basically for the last 22 years, and they just keep getting better. I've never been a huge fan. I think I own their entire catalog, but I don't know that I've ever really looked at them as, one of my favorites by any means. But for Brian, this was an easy call for him. Really, he just praised the album through and through, and I think that what's most important in his review is saying that they are getting better, and that's something that's tremendous for a band to be around 22 years. And we see this a lot. I mean, you see bands like Enslaved, you see bands like Borknagar, who are just getting better and better with each album because they're identifying what they are and who they are. And if that gets better, then, I mean, you have a recipe for success. So the Seventh Symphony is surely Kalmah at their best. Another band that surprised me this week was the band Sleestak. Now, again, as I've noted in the review, for people who haven't been around or not into classic TV, there was a show called Land of the Lost. I'm sure you've heard it referenced before. You probably know parts of the theme song. But there are creatures in there which are called Sleestaks. And again, as I noted, it's complicated. I don't want to explain it all to you. But basically, this is a psychedelic groove metal album that I really enjoyed a lot more than I think I expected. And apparently, by my review, I enjoyed it a lot more than the band expected. And I think they're doing something really cool here. The style that they play, the way they kind of fuse old and new, and just do it with no apologies. There's no excuses made here. They just do what they do, and here it is. Here it is in front of you, like it or leave it. And that's great. It's great. And I know I've used the word honesty a couple times, but that's what it is. It's putting it in front of you and saying, hey, we got some good grooves here. We got some really good bass work. If that's your thing, cool. And I really think that if you listen to the album, it really will be your thing. Because if you like anything, that's been in this psychedelic stoner vein that I know we've covered ad nauseum at times, this is an album that you will enjoy. It's called the Book of Hours EP, also available on their Bandcamp. And I love Bandcamp. I don't know if I've mentioned that before, but get on there and check it out. Throw them a few bucks, because this will be an EP that you will enjoy tremendously over the course of the next 6 months, year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. The same could be said for the new album by Chthonic. Now, we know Chthonic, we love Chthonic. They seem to be a band in discussions with people around the site and friends. They're just a band that they don't do anything wrong. You know exactly what you're going to get, and they give it to you time and time again. By no means does that mean that they're stale. They're not just rehashing the same thing. They're not the modern day AC/DC. They are just giving you extreme metal at its best. They blew us away with their last album, and this one is really, it's no different. I mean, it's called Boutique, and it's kind of this weird futuristic kind of story going on here, which I suggest you go to their site and read kind of the tagline of the whole thing. I think that adds a little layer to it. But they just give it to you so clearly and so straightforward, but yet there's so many elements going on. The use of the air hood instrument is fantastic. The use of the classic vocals, which start a couple of the tracks, awesome. But they just come at you with this unbridled brutality. They're just shredding and pounding their way at you at all times. It seems like they just can't stop. But they do it well, and they do it in this really restrained manner, where they're not just throwing it at you like, hey, take it, take it, take it. They give you, melodic turns. They give you really, really rich sound structures, and they just don't, they don't waste any time. And they give it to you every time. You always know if there's a new Chthonic album out, damn fucking well it's going to be good. And in all of this and all their success and their notoriety around the world, they are always striving, for that political goal of independence for Taiwan, which I remember seeing them at Ozfest years ago, and they spent a good portion of their set when they weren't playing. Instead of all of the stupid crowd banter like, hey, ladies, get your t-shirts off, they were really, you know, I hate to use the word preach, but they were really preaching to a captivated crowd of a few thousand, saying like, hey, you guys might not understand how this works, but we're going to lay it out for you. You know, think about that. And granted, a lot of people were drunk and people were passed out and fighting and whatever, but I think it hit a few people, myself in particular. So think about that. Independence for Taiwan and extreme metal from Taiwan can go hand in hand. So that was the week in reviews. And, you know, when I did this podcast last week, I had said, you know, well, this was a great week. Well, the upcoming week is another great week. Bruce Sword with Jonas Rensk, the Wisdom of Crowds album, which many of you probably haven't heard, but you should. A great up-and-coming band called Within the Fall. Another band called Norskald, some really intense blackened metal. The new Sleestak album, which, speaking of bands that seemingly can't do any wrong, and I think Brian is actually tackling the new Amon Amarth, which he's been waiting for with bated breath. So it's going to be another fucking packed week. But, as I said, the end of this week, do a special podcast taking your questions. So get your questions into us, and I will answer them the best I can, and as many as I can in, you know, this short time frame. So keep an ear open for all of that. Keep reading the reviews. Keep checking it out. If you have an album you want us to review, shoot it to us on Facebook or email us, sorreternalblog@gmail.com. And spread the word of good metal across the board. And we will see you guys at the end of the week.